me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey, welcome to our favorite day of the week. It's Friday, which means it's Film Friday. So today we talk about the movie that we saw most recently, The Invisible Man, starring Elizabeth Moss. It is a great psychological thriller. It's a movie that I was excited to break down, and I was very excited to see the first time I saw the trailer for it. And the movie, honestly, exceeded expectations. And that was really hard to do because I thought it was going to be a very good movie, and it turned out to be even better than I could expect. So, before we get too deep into it, I'm going to tell you now, this is a spoiler-filled podcast, not a spoiler-free, a spoiler-filled podcast. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, or if you're planning to see it soon, this is the time to check out and come back in once you see it, and you can enjoy it with the rest of us. If you have seen it already, this would be the podcast for you, because we talk about what we loved, what we didn't love, who won, who lost the movie, all of that and more. So, if you haven't seen it yet, this is the time to check out. All right, let's talk about it. So, the first thing I really enjoyed from this movie, the plot of this movie, is Elizabeth Moss' character is in an abusive relationship. She's able to escape only to have her abuser torment her. Okay? So he torments her with this invisibility suit that he builds himself. He is the leader in optics. His brother is kind of like his lackey in that way. And in the trailer, it looks like she has to spend 5 days in this house, and you're expecting just all the normal stuff, the bumps in the closet, stuff like that. This is the number one thing that I really loved about this movie, is that the trailer subverted your expectations for the movie. And there's been a couple horror movies recently that have done a very good job of giving the story, a little bit of the story in the previews, a little bit of story in the trailer, and then completely changing what you should expect in the movie. And that is something that is a art form, I think. I think that a lot of these directors, a lot of these production studios and film studios in the past have given too much away. I want to go to a movie, especially a thriller, and not know how the movie's going to end. I don't want to know any of the twists or the turns. I want to just have the premise of the movie. I want the basic plot line. And let me go to the movie. Let me enjoy my popcorn and my jump scares and everything. And just leave me alone, okay? Sucker me in, and then I'm there. That's all you really need to do. Heist movies are the same way, where they give a little bit too much of the plot away. I just need to know that this is the heist, that this is the last run, that this is the grand jewel. But don't give me how, one person gets captured and, they get pinned down by gunfire. I don't need to know all that. Just give me the basic summary. And that's what this movie does in the trailers. It gives you a basic summary, kind of subverts it by saying, she has to stay in the house for 5 days. That doesn't actually happen in the movie, and that is something that I really, really, really liked. I love that. The other thing I really liked about this movie is that it made it modern. If you haven't read or you didn't know about the original Invisible Man, the science fiction novel written by H.G. Wells in 1897. I know, I knew all those numbers off the top of my head, right? In 1897, H.G. Wells writes this fiction novel about a guy who is experimenting with becoming invisible. He tries it on a cat, does it for himself. It's a really interesting novel. So if you have a lot of time, if you're an avid reader, I would check that book out. But I like that they made it they had a modern twist on it, that they said that this guy created a suit, creates a suit, and that's how he does it. Because we're being completely honest here. In 2020, there are people who are trying to figure out ways to create invisibility suits. They're trying to create ways to make it harder. A lot of military industrial complex people are trying to figure out a way for camouflage to be more effective, how to bend light in certain ways. So it was very believable, for me at least, to see a multi-billionaire have the capacity, or the capability to make a suit like that. I bought it. So immediately, when you do something like that, you immediately have an audience member like myself completely bought into the movie. That there was nothing during this movie that wasn't going to really knock me away. Like, you started off really well. And then, of course, the beginning part of this movie, it was a drawback, but at the same time, the movie worked very well with this, is the entire time, like we mentioned in the Uncut Gems, you're on the edge of your seat. And you're on the edge of your seat in this movie differently than Uncut Gems, but I'm still sitting in the same spot, okay? Barely on the seat because I need to see what happens next. The movie opens up with our character, Elizabeth Moss, trying to escape from the house. She's trying to get out of Adrian's house. Okay, Adrian, the multi-billionaire, who she's in an abusive relationship with. She drugs him. She knocks him out with some sleeping pills. She runs down the hill. She gets in her sister's car. She gets out, nick of time. Now, you have to suspend disbelief in a lot of ways during these movies. In thrillers, that's just part of the deal, right? You have to suspend disbelief because there's a couple things in any type of movie like this that you're going to leave the theater scratching your head if you think too hard or too long about it. How did Adrian run down the hill that Cecil was able to? I don't know. Okay, open up for debate. No clue how he was able to get down the hill that quick. Also, how does her pill bottle for the sleeping pills fall out of her bag when it looked like it was pretty steady in there? The bag looked kind of deep, so I don't know how that pill bottle fell out. Again, you got to suspend disbelief. You got to let the movie continue to move forward. So, a couple other times, Adrian lifts up a knife in the restaurant, and you can see how nobody else in the restaurant saw just a random knife hanging out, just open. How that occurs beyond me. So again, you gotta suspend disbelief. But Elizabeth Moss in this movie, you might remember her from Handmaid's Tale. You might remember her from Mad Men. This is one of the first movies that I've seen her in. I didn't see her in the Kitchen. I think that's what the movie was called, where it was her and two other strong female leads, and they were running a mob. I didn't watch that movie. It didn't interest me enough. I thought she was going to be good in it, but I just didn't have time. There was other things happening. I missed it. My bad. But this was the first movie that I saw her in that she was a lead. She was the person that was going to hold it. And I will say this, that there are a handful of actors and actresses in Hollywood right now who can tell a complete story, who can tell an entire hold an entire movie on facial expressions. I mentioned it with Louis Dreyfus last week with Downhill. How there's scenes where the camera just cuts to her face and there's dialogue going on, and she is able to just hold the audience's attention just by her facial reactions. Just by her facial reactions. In this movie, Elizabeth Moss does something very similar, where you get a movie like Invisible Man where you know that he's going to be very quiet. You know that he's going to do everything he can not to be drawing attention to himself. So you have Moss kind of having to carry the movie in a lot of scenes by herself, or interacting with something that the audience members can't see because he is invisible. And that is a very impressive skill. And I thought that they picked the perfect actress for this too. And we're going to get into it in a second, the overarching message of this movie and the thing that I really left the theater feeling. And I know that a lot of people left the theater feeling similar because there's been a lot of columns and movie reviews written about it. But I thought she did a really good job of kind of taking that character from Handmaid's Tale, taking that typecast that she has right now and really running with it. And she did an excellent job in this movie, and hands down, this is going to be a movie that I'm going to remember her for. Now, if Invisible Man, say it doesn't have very good rewatchability, because I don't think I'm going to be rewatching it anytime soon, but the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, very impressive. It's right where I thought it would be. It's 91% on the tomato meter, 89% on the audience score, which for a movie that's come out relatively recently, that's a pretty good number. And I think it's going to stay right around there, around 90% on both of those. This is a movie that hands down, I think is going to be one of the better thrillers of the year. And like I said, I thought that they did a really good job of subverting not only the trailer but the original Invisible Man. And this is a movie that is going to be really good. Again, rewatchability wise, I don't think it's very rewatchable, but it's going to be. If you haven't seen it, if you're thinking about seeing it, this is a movie I would see. So let's talk about the winners and losers. So big winner, of course, Elisabeth Moss. How I think that she really she leaves this movie, I think, in a better space than she walked into. I think that this is going to be one of those movies that's going to propel her career. I thought she was very good in the scenes that she had to carry by herself because Adrian was invisible. She did an excellent job. The scenes in the mental institution where she had to be very physical, she had to be very emotional. It was very emotional scenes. She did an excellent job carrying those. This is the part of I can't think of anything besides the play out of. I can't think of anything besides the overplayed problems that all these thrillers have. That there's going to be plot holes, there's going to be issues like that. So I don't really want to nitpick there. A lot more good scenes, a lot more highs than lows. This is the overarching message, though. This is the thing that I left the theater really feeling, and this is why Elisabeth Moss did so well, in my opinion, is because this movie, at its core, to me at least, is about abuse, and is about moving on from that abuse. And in this 2020, in this Me Too era, in this era of believing survivors and victims, this movie fits in perfectly. Because the message is that the abuse that guys like Adrian would have, being very vindictive, very controlling, and Elisabeth Moss's character mentions this in the movie, how he would micromanage. How he would just take parts of her life and just control parts of her life, and how he is now torturing her again, making her feel like the crazy one. I've talked to a lot of women. I have a lot of friends who have been in these type of relationships. Or I know people who have been in similar types of relationships with very controlling boyfriends or very controlling girlfriends. And I thought that this movie did an excellent job of portraying that. Now, granted, your ex isn't in an invisible suit torturing you, but the trauma that I think that they inflict is real. And I think that's a real thing that people are talking about in 2020. And I think that this movie does a very good job of kind of moving that dialogue forward with this type of cinema. And when we talk about what we really like in movies, and I've done this on every podcast, the rewatchability, the scenes that I really like, the actors or actresses who had an incredible performance. The other thing, and this is something that we don't get a whole lot, and we haven't really talked about much on this podcast, or these podcasts in general, is that there needs to be a message. And I think that this movie moves the message of trauma forward, of significant other abuse forward. And that's something that is it might be understated. It might be something that a lot of people don't talk about when we kind of talk about thrillers. But a movie like this, where I was engaged the entire time, there wasn't. I think there may be 2 times that I lost a little bit of interest in the movie. That there might have been a lull. It was very impressed. I was very impressed by the way that the entire staff. I just thought they did a very good job with this movie. So I'm going to give this movie 7.5 out of 10. I think this is probably going to be the best thriller of the year. Storm Reid played Sydney Lanter in this movie, the daughter of James, who's the cop friend of the family. I thought that she had an excellent performance as well. I thought that they played a very good daughter-father type of situation. At the end of the movie, this is a big spoiler alert, at the end of the movie when she finally gets vengeance on her abuser, I thought that was a very powerful scene. I thought that was a very good scene. And at the end of the day, if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. So we have the AL Preview podcast. That is coming out as well today. So Friday, you got a lot of stuff to listen to. All the podcasts that we've done, they're all up still. You can go check all of those out. A lot of good content coming your way. I will talk to you guys next week.